Hello everyone, B.O.R.G Dexter here, and today I will be reviewing Starship Troopers Terran Command, a game developed by the Aristocrats and published by Slytherin. It was released on June 16, 2022, and will set you back 25 euros or 30 US dollars on Steam, depending on where you live. Starship Troopers Terran Command is an RTS game, though I would argue that there is not much strategy to be seen here. Right off the bat, I will say that even with this price, it would be best if you hold off for a price drop or a sale, unless you are a massive fan of the movie or other media pertaining to this franchise. I myself am not a big fan of this franchise, and this is the first game I played with the Starship Troopers thematic. I am aware that there were others which I did not play. However, this makes it easier to be objective when reviewing the game. This game consists of 19 campaign missions and 2 additional scenarios. Before you start each mission, you choose the difficulty, which is represented by 5 stars. 1 star is the easiest and 5 stars being the hardest difficulty. The only thing the difficulty changes is the damage output of your soldiers. It goes from double damage output, then 1.5 damage, then 1 damage with 3 stars, and then 4 stars it's 0.75 damage, and with 5 stars being the hardest difficulty it's 0.5 times damage, or half the damage. It does not affect or modify any other aspect of the game, like enemy AI or its numbers, as far as I can tell, and I've tested this. I played the game, all missions in the first playthrough, on the medium or 3-star difficulty. The game has no multiplayer or even a skirmish mode, by the way. Like I said, it is an RTS game, but without much strategy in my opinion. And the base building is very bare bones. Essentially, you have radio stations scattered throughout the map, and a few slots around each station to build buildings that unlock certain unit types. For example, build a support center to recruit snipers and tactical officers, rocket depots for rocketeers, ammo dumps for Mark II troopers, and so on. Each base consists of a radio relay station, like I said, and a certain number of slots for buildings and storing supplies. You need to take over and keep each relay station to field units from it. There is also no resource gathering of any kind. Instead, all resources are acquired by either completing main or side objectives, while some, namely supplies, can be found on the map or are rewarded to you upon capturing a base. Supplies take the role of money with which you can recruit units. Each unit requires a certain amount of supplies to recruit it. There is another type of resource called war support. These points are gained by completing primary and side objectives. They are used to build 3 turret types with your engineers, each turret with its own pros and cons. War support is also used for building some buildings that field stronger unit types later in the game. These said stronger unit types also need a certain amount of war support points if they are to be recruited. The biggest thing with this game, gameplay-wise, is line of sight, meaning that if there is a unit directly behind another unit, they will not be able to fire at all. Objects scattered around the map also get in the way of line of sight. This is represented by a reticle above each unit. Green means unobstructed sight, yellow partially obstructed, and red means they cannot fire. So the best formation is that of a firing squad, where everyone is spread out and out of each other's way. However, some unit types, both friendly and enemies, disregard this, such as snipers, rocket troopers, who are absolutely vital in my opinion due to this and the fact that they tear through enemy armor, or the enemy scorpion bugs. These units are best placed behind close combat specialists such as E-Pulse troopers, which you get fairly late in the game. Another important mechanic is reinforcing units. It is done by clicking on the Request Reinforcements button, which is represented by 2 crosses. This can be done only if the unit took damage, of course. Once requested, the reinforcements will arrive at the landing site at the nearest base, where the wounded units need to go to replenish itself. Once it does replenish, it returns to the previous position from which it departed. The gameplay loop consists of capturing bases and clearing out hives, which are enemy spawn points basically. Sometimes you need to defend a certain point from waves of incoming bugs, but these situations are somewhat rare and should have been included more, in my opinion. Some missions are entirely squad-based, where there is no base building whatsoever. You need to take very good care of units you already start with, as in most cases you cannot replace them in these kinds of missions. Aside from the occasional scripted points where you do get more units once you progress through such missions a bit. Sometimes, towards the end of some missions, you need to conduct a sort of tactical retreat, while preserving a mission-critical unit oftentimes. In these cases, it is best to take baby steps using the attack move command between shooting bugs who oftentimes come from multiple sides, back to clearing out hives. When it comes to enemy spawn points, there are multiple kinds. First off, we have brood nests, which kinda look like anthills, and they spawn drones, which are small, weak and fast enemies. Getting rid of them is straightforward, just locate them and attack them and destroy them. Then there are bug tunnels, which are connected to a nearby hive and cannot be neutralized directly. You need to enter and take out the connected hive directly in order to neutralize the surrounding tunnels. Above hives and bug tunnels, there is an icon of bugs. Now this represents how many waves remain in the hive or the tunnel. Below it is a red line which is slowly being filled. When the line is full, one bug icon is filled up, which means that one wave of bugs is stored, if you could say that, in the said hive or tunnel. So, to be able to send units in hives to destroy them, first you need to deplete the hive population, represented by the bugs icon above the hive. Then send your units in to finish it off. But you need to be careful of the hive strength. Just hover your mouse over the hive to see the strength of it. If it is too big for the strength of your army to take out, you need to kill more bugs from the surrounding tunnels and the hive itself to weaken it. Now, you need to do it quickly, in one go, or else the hive is reinforced. This is often tricky, especially later in the game, where most hives are surrounded by 3 tunnels. You need to engage at least 2 tunnels and the hive at the same time, to be able to deplete the hive strength fast enough. Later in the game, even this will not be enough. Now, depending on the positioning of the hive and tunnels, this can be frustrating. Keep in mind that you need to be close to the hive and tunnels to make the bugs come out. Otherwise, the bugs will not attack you. So you need to remain close to oftentimes 2 tunnels at a time and the hive itself. Later in the game, you need to deplete all 3 tunnels and the hive itself, which can be really tricky. The enemy will send small waves to your bases in order to try and recapture them and render them unusable. If that happens, you need to retake that base from the bugs in order to use it again, and all of its connected buildings that you previously may have built. Another thing that adds to the mounting frustration I felt while playing is the huge need for micromanaging your units. I can't stress this enough. For example, I like to use my Rocketeers to shoot at armored and ranged enemies as soon as they pop up, so they do not decimate my troops. However, there is no way to prioritize targets for your units, which means that you will need to keep your Rocketeers selected all the time and manually order them to kill armored and ranged enemies as soon as they pop up. If you do not, they will simply aim at the closest enemies, which your other units are more equipped to deal with. If I could at least create a group and assign a hotkey for my Rocketeers, so I can select them faster when I need them, that would somewhat alleviate the needless frustration. But no, to the best of my knowledge, you cannot do this in the game. When ordered to attack an enemy, units will often stand behind their comrades, even though they have room to maneuver around them and start shooting. Instead, you often have to manually position them. Now, if you do not like heavy micromanaging of units, you will not enjoy the game. I myself am not a big fan of hyper micromanaging games. There is also no way to set formations for your selected units. The game will line them up for you in a firing squad line if the terrain allows it. Sometimes you will need to bring your ranged troopers back manually, as the game will sometimes line them up with the close quarter units, especially in tight areas. So, suffice to say, pathfinding is a bit underdeveloped. That's why I said that there is not much strategy here. You just move, stop, kill bugs, and then move again. The game even says itself, keep shooting, rinse, and repeat.
Here they come again. Keep shooting. Rinse and repeat.
No resource management, not really. No destroying enemy resource processing buildings, just their spawn points. More on enemy units. The bugs, much like you, have different unit types, each specialized for a certain role. For frontline fighting, among others, we have the common warriors, the more robust tiger bugs, and absolute tanks called royal guards, which have a hellfire of their own. Actually, they have two, so you need to kill them twice in a way. Rocketeers, I found, are very good for dealing with these. In the ranged category, we have enemy plasma bugs, which are big stationary artillery with big area of effect attacks. Then there are plasma grenadiers, which are mobile but fairly inaccurate artillery bugs. Spiggers, which are little green bugs, and they are fairly easy to kill, although sometimes annoying. And the bane of each mobile infantry trooper, the scorpion bug. They are mobile, heavily armored, high damage dealing ranged units. They are precise, and if you do not quickly kill them, you will need to micromanage the hell out of your soldiers to evade its attacks, because these bugs are deadly. In my opinion, these bugs are a bit overused in the missions. Now, it's one thing to put these enemies in missions which are not entirely squad-based, because you have tools to deal with this menace, namely rocketeers and radio operators. They are my preferred units, and radio operators are used to place landing spots for your reinforcements anywhere on the map, allowing you to reinforce any casualties on the spot, which is key for maintaining the push to the hives and dealing with the hives and hordes of enemies in the hive itself, as well as the surrounding bug tunnels, another essential unit. But when these vermin are placed in squad-based missions, which happens at times, I had to basically save scum to kill it with the few precious units I have, while taking extreme care to keep casualties to a minimum, since I do not know when my units will be reinforced, if at all, in these types of missions. In my opinion, this causes needless frustrations, since you are given very few tools to adequately deal with this threat in squad-based missions. When you complete the campaign, you can play 2 challenge missions. These were pretty good in my opinion. One is a pretty classic destroy hives around the map type of mission, while the other utilizes powered suit troopers, which are the coolest player unit and in general the coolest unit in the game. They sound and look cool and are pretty powerful for ground units. In fact, I prefer them to the Marauders, who are, even though they are gigantic mechs, underpowered in my opinion, and do not feel empowering as I thought they would do. Once you complete these 2 scenarios, that's it. It took me about 13 hours to complete the campaign and the 2 scenarios, while taking notes for the review while I was playing. There is no multiplayer to speak of, no skirmish mode either, no map editor. It is a bit underwhelming content-wise, even for its price tag. I have been pretty rough on the game so far, so now I will try to focus on the components that I liked. The music, it is pretty fitting and gives off a great movie vibe, especially when you are in dark, damp, underground levels. Now imagine this, you're going through these tunnels, everything is quiet, too quiet. Suddenly bugs jump from nowhere, and the music takes off immediately and quiets down after the unexpected threat is dealt with.
Yes, sir.
It helps set the atmosphere a lot. Also, in situations where you expect bug waves and you scramble to set up defenses, and when they eventually crash down upon your walls, the music contributes a lot to that panicky, overwhelming dread as you fight tooth and nail for survival. Speaking of wave defense, that also feels great. Watching waves upon waves of bugs squirming in a pool of their own blood while dying feels pretty good. It gives you a feeling, even though your human troops are much weaker than the bugs, they make up for it with discipline and tactics.
Sir? Move it or lose it, people! Roger that.
Alert. Bug attack inbound. We've got a unit under attack. We've got a unit under attack. We've got a unit under attack. We've got a unit under attack.
Tell us what to do.
Sensors are picking up new bug hive activity.
Sir, stash your tools and move out. Sir. On the move.
Sir, additional supplies are now available. Our war support has increased, sir. Dropships on standby, ready for orders.
Dropships have arrived with extra supplies and munitions. They will remain on standby to deliver reinforcements.
All right. Let's get some more boots on these walls.
Where do you need it? Look sharp. Roger that.
Alert. Bug attack inbound.
Standing by.
We've got a unit under attack.
I also liked the cutscene and the federal TV broadcasts set up a nice atmosphere. Even though cutscenes themselves are pretty basic, just still images with a bit of panning and small animations at times, it just feels fitting for the game. If this were another game, I might not have liked it, but here it felt appropriate and good somehow. Regarding voice acting in said cutscenes, they are good. Other major characters sound more or less good also. Now, when it comes to units in the field responding to you, these are more or less bland and they get old quickly. I'm gonna dream of phrases like, "Come on, you apes," or "If we ain't died, we ain't tried." Some units, like the Power Trooper, sound cooler and have more diverse voice lines. As far as the in-game graphics go, they get a pass from me. Not great, but not bad either. This may be due to the fairly undiverse color palette, since you will be playing either underground or in open deserts, sprinkled with cityscapes. It gets the job done. When it comes to animations, they are also a bit meh. The bugs are good, but the soldiers have funny firing animations, for example. They constantly lower and raise their weapons when there are enemies in front of them, instead of shooting longer bursts and lowering their weapons when there are no bugs around. The snipers are especially funny when shooting.
Come on! Come on, you apes! Affirmative. Do it!
Regarding the sound effects of the guns and the troops and bugs dying, I feel it felt just a tiny bit too short of being good enough. Still, it's a minor gripe for me. Story-wise, it is what you expect from an RTS game, though there are exceptions to this, like the amazing StarCraft 2, which had a pretty good story. So the story is pretty basic, but I do not play RTS games for the story, so I will not hold it against the game at all. I know I said I would talk about good elements of the game, but sadly they are too far spread out into sea of other negative traits of the game. Next, I will talk a bit about the technical aspects of the game and the performance. I have an okay PC, I'd say, with an i9 9900K CPU and 32GB of RAM, and an AMD RX 5600 XT GPU, which is certainly the weakest link and pretty weak. It's a pretty weak GPU in itself. Despite this, I played the game with no frame rate drops at all, while the graphics settings were set at maximum. I had only 2 crashes in one mission where there was an exceptional number of bugs and my own troopers on the screen. Since I have a weak GPU, I cannot place the blame on the game, as the issue was likely due to the inability of my GPU to keep up with all the action on the screen at that time. Besides, I played on maximum settings the whole game and had no other issues at all. Overall, a stable experience for me. All in all, Starship Troopers Terran Command is not a bad game, but not a good one either. It sits in between, resting on the average. It does not do anything great or groundbreaking, but neither does it suck big time in any of the aspects either. I would say that I will forget about this game in a few months, if not weeks. Unless you are a massive fan of the Starship Trooper franchise in whatever media, I would suggest to skip this one or wait for a sale. If you are starving for RTS games, there are many other games that will scratch that itch way better than this game. Even if you play them all, perhaps you are better off replaying them again. I give Starship Troopers Terran Command a 5 out of 10. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, thumb it down. Consider subscribing to the channel. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this game, and do you agree with me or not.